Hi everyone! So the figure that won the poll was the wild tiger, and so here is her work in progress. So to begin with, I took the skull, which was the normal way of moulding the skull, but I had to scrape away the mouth because she has a smile. So you have to scrape away an area to actually add more clay later on for the smile. So then, after I've done that, I put the eyes in, which I don't always do. I often just do the profile first and add the eyes later. But here I am adding that first triangle for the nose. That's always where I start, the triangle for the nose. Then I build up the forehead, build up the chin. Of course, with this one, you've scraped away a lot of the skull at the bottom, so you've got to put it in again. And that's where it's very good to rely on your profile reference photograph. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going back to my profile reference photograph over and over, making sure that I have enough of a jaw at the bottom, because of course when you smile everything changes a little bit, so your jaw is not maybe as long as it is when your face is straight, so you have to take all these measurements into consideration. And I'm just adding small pieces of clay as I go, blending them into what I already have on the face, just equal parts on both sides, adding little bits for the brow bone, using my ball tool around the area where the eyes and the nose are. I find those ball tools very useful for that area particularly. This is a big smile, so your cheeks are going to come up quite a lot on the sides. So 3/4 views are brilliant for that. Then when it comes to actually doing the smile, you have to dig very deep. So I'm measuring the smile there, and then I am taking that measurement across to my figure and I'm pressing really hard in, because what you want is quite deep. You have to go quite deep because your cheeks are sort of pulling backwards across your teeth, and the depth in the mouth is quite deep. For a lot of my figures, I don't usually put in the teeth straight away, so that's why she has no teeth at the moment. So I'm building up the brow bone at the moment. Again, 3/4 views are really good for this. That pointy tool is brilliant. It really digs in around the eyes to make sure that you don't build up too much clay around the eyes. You need the skin to sort of hug your eyes the way it would on real people. So she looks a little bit like she has false teeth and she's left them out at the moment, but I do find that can be quite useful, as I will show you later on in the video. I'm using another ball tool to really go around the eyes. It's very useful for the tear ducts as well, different sizes of ball tools, and my pointy tools. The pointy tool, I don't know what you would call it really, but it comes in a pack for nail art. With nail art brushes, you always get a pointy tool. I've got about 10 of them already, and I find them very useful. And I have my favorite one. They're all the same, but I have one that's my favorite and I use it all the time and have done for years. So I'm building up small pieces of clay around the eyes, because I remember when I first started, I used to get too much clay around the eyes. As you can see now, the shape of your eyes changes a lot when you smile. So it's slowly building up, looking at the reference, building up the clay, very small pieces around the eyes, equal parts on both sides, so you don't get one side with a whole lot more clay than the other. I've been there before as well. And then you really start to see the actual real genuine smile on a person's face. Of course, as well, with a smile you've got wrinkles around the mouth, so it's also a question of building those up as well, and reference is really good for that too. Also, your own face. Look at your own face in the mirror can help a lot with that as well. So when everything's sculpted and I'm ready to put her in the oven, first of all I need to smooth everything down. So I'm using my brushes, smooth everything down using my mineral spirit, and just do slowly. I use my brush as well, so to put pressure here and there, different size brushes to go around, especially go around the eyes. But yeah, you just put pressure where there is maybe a bit of a shadow. So brushes can be really good tools as well. While you're smoothing, you're also sort of sculpting at the same time. And then after she's been baked, the face has been baked for about 40 minutes, it's time to paint. Started with the eyebrows. Really great to paint a face when it is still just a face on a wire, because you can turn it upside down, check symmetry. I even went all the way into painting the mouth, painted the dark inside the mouth, painted the lips as well, because this way you don't get paint on the teeth. I'm leaving putting in the teeth till the very last minute, so I'm pretty much painting everything. But I do find this a very good way to make sure that when you put the teeth in, they're nice and white and they don't get full of paint. Moving on to the hands, obviously always using an armature, wire armature, then a layer of clay on the top which gets baked, and then once that's all nice and solid, I can go on and add a layer of raw clay. And I'm just using a little bit of liquid clay to make sure that the new raw clay sticks to the hands, sticks to the fingers especially, because otherwise it can be really fiddly. I also use a bit of extra mix quick in the clay mix for the hands, which makes that little bit of clay that I'm going to use for the hands a little bit softer and even more sticky, which helps it to actually stick to the baked armature. And I'm just using my little dentist tools, which I've again had since I started sculpting sort of 15 years ago. I find them very, very useful. They're still the same tools I had from the beginning, and I'm starting to build up the foot now. I used to make the feet separate to the body. I've changed that now, but it's another way. It's very good to do it that way as well. It works very well, and I did that for many, many years. So I'm just putting some creases on the foot and smoothing it down with some mineral spirit. And then it's on to building up the body. And as you can see in the background, I have a pose that I was copying, and that is a pose from the website Female Anatomy for the Artist, and you get poses from 8 different angles, which is very useful. So the same pose from 8 different angles. I'm building up the neck. I always start with the neck really, and I added some more clay to the back of the head as well, because I never really worry about the back of the head while I'm making the face. Once the head is on the body, I can see more how much of a back of a head I need to build up, so it's very useful to do it once it's on the body. I did quite a lot on this one, as you can see, of the wrist and the forearm, which I don't always do, but that can actually be very useful because we're adding the hand at the elbow, and it's just a lot easier to sculpt those fiddly areas when they're off the body. Building up the clavicle area with the bones of the clavicle, that's a really nice area to sculpt as well. Just using my dentist tool, I think they call it a dentist tool, or maybe they're called a soap sculpting tool, I'm not sure, but I've always called them a dentist tool, to build up the body, shaping the torso. And then I'm on to the legs. So on this figure, I did put the legs on, so I built the legs while they were on the body. I do think that all in all, I prefer doing that way, because you can really see exactly what size, what shape you need your legs to be. Another tool that I love is my cutting knife. It's very, very satisfying to peel that clay off the body and sort of pare it away. It's very, I love that feeling. It cuts through it so nice and smoothly. I'm building up the back now. My sculpting stand, very, very useful for these kind of figures, because it's almost like having a third hand that you can hold the figure with, and it doesn't squish what you've already done. I remember this pose being quite difficult to get right. I think it's probably just because it's quite a complicated pose. But yeah, I think I had to move my figure around quite a few times and just that pose, but eventually we got there. And then again at the end, I used my brushes to smooth all of those many lines that I have happily made while I was sculpting. I have to then try to get rid of them. So that this time I used some alcohol, which is not what I usually use, but I was doing a test here to see whether the alcohol would crack my clay. And from what I remember, it was fine. I never had any problems with cracking. I just find that alcohol dries so fast that there's not very much time to smooth with it. I prefer using mineral spirit, so I kind of went back to mineral spirit after this, to be honest. But you can use alcohol, it does work. So does oil, but oil takes a very long time to dry, so your clay stays sticky for far too long. And then when she's baked, there's a nice hole that needs to be filled in from where the stand was. So what I do with that is I add a little bit of liquid clay and then just push a piece of raw clay in and smooth it out. And then I wanted her to have a piece of fabric that she was sort of draped over herself, so that is just another piece of clay. If you bake that clay at the required temperature, which is 130 for my clay mix, because that's the temperature for CERNIT, and I mix my clay with FIMO and CERNIT, so I bake at the higher temperature. So if you bake that piece of fabric in inverted commas for an hour, it's very strong. So that's what I do usually. So now I am painting in all of the shadow areas, just again mixing a color with my Genesis paint that is slightly darker than the color of the clay, so that you kind of bring out those shadows. And I'm just using my old brushes, which are really cheap brushes, and because I rarely scrub with my brushes when I paint, I don't buy expensive brushes because they don't last. And then it's on to the tattoo. So first of all, I map it out with a darkish color, so draw in all the lines so I know where I'm going to put color. So when I go in with the color, my dark base drawing will show through with that dark paint that I used in the beginning. So I'm going over it now with the orange. You can still see the dark of the sketch that I painted underneath, so you never lose track of where you are and where you need to put color. You don't lose track of the original drawing. So I'm just adding color. I love doing tattoos and I love building up the colors. It's like doing a little oil painting. So I just build the color up slowly, going from darkest to lightest in the shadows. There isn't really any particular process involved, it's just a bit of fiddling. And it was really nice to give him bright blue eyes because it really sort of made him come to life. And the last little thing I always do at the very end is put some light in the eyes, which really does bring everything to life. I always use reference pictures for my tattoos. I always find something on the internet that I can copy. I'm definitely a copier when it comes to drawing and sculpting. And then it was onto her hair. I used viscose fiber, and mostly tacky glue is the thing I use with viscose fiber, but sometimes I also use a bit of Fabri-Tac. It's mostly tacky glue when it comes to viscose. You don't really need Fabri-Tac for viscose fiber. It's very, very easy to use. Thank you for watching, and thank you to all my patrons on Patreon for supporting me. I really appreciate every one of you. If you'd like to join me on Patreon, I'd be so happy to welcome you into my studio. I'm currently uploading 1 hour of sculpting tutorials each month at patreon.com/Renata Jansen. There are hundreds of videos on there for you to watch. You can join for less than $2 per week. We've just finished sculpting the salty mermaid in a teacup, and I've posted the first part of sculpting the absinthe fairy for this month. I'd love to see you there. You can also sign up for my mailing list for free by clicking on the link in the video description. Everyone who signs up gets a free in-depth sculpting a nose tutorial. So thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and click on the notification bell so you don't miss the next video. Thank you. See you again soon.